heard and our ideas valued? And how does that show up in your organizations today?
Sharon, if I could, what you just said really resonated with me, because I'm also a public speaker, and I was just interviewed on a podcast last week. And what's interesting to me is I was being interviewed by a white male, your kind of typical business guy from Canada, right? So that was interesting. But the first thing he said is, we have this lovely young woman here. And I thought to myself, first of all, who cares about any of that, right? Like, how about talking about why I'm here? Not because, and also I'm not young. I have two boys who are in their 20s. So
Right.
young went out a long time ago. And I just thought, and he didn't just say it once, by the way, he said it at least 3 times. I listened to it again. And, that feeling, like that instant kind of like, you have got to be kidding. You've invited me here for my expertise, and the first thing you talk about is what I look like and that I'm a woman. And so I was curious to hear. I know, right? Thank you, Katie. I know. And it was so amazing to me because, of course, I'm a professional. So I'm not going to, in the middle of a podcast that's being, being viewed live on Facebook, is now on YouTube. I'm not going to. But then I thought to myself, did I miss an opportunity?
Yeah.
And how would you, so this is talk about microaggressions. And this happens all the time. And I'm not even a woman of color, right? I can't even imagine what that looks like on a daily basis. And so I wonder, how would you have responded? Is there a way to respond in that situation? But then without, of course, doing exactly what you said. Oh, the tone, oh, women, we're too sensitive, we're too dramatic, or, fill in the whatever it is. But I'm still kind of processing this. So anyway, thank you.
And it certainly has a long-standing impact, right? Like this,
Yes.
That day is gone and you're still processing that. Before I respond, is there any support in the chat? Anyone who would like to speak out, to help Ollie? Am I saying your name correct?
Orly.
Oh, Orly. Okay,
Orly.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I see the eye. Yeah, that's a tough situation. Leaders on the call, any feedback for Orly?
I would
feel free to unmute.
So one thing I would suggest doing, and things like this happen to me all the time, and I think that I've historically struggled to address them in a way where I was being objective, and I think that's maybe where I landed, is taking someone to the side or maybe addressing it at a later time and saying, here's the objective. We're trying to dismantle the systemic practices or racism, or if our objective is to create gender and racial diversity and equity and inclusion, these are the things that probably shouldn't be said or made me uncomfortable because this is the historical background, or these are how these things play out once they're said. And this is how, there are certain things that are said, and now that's the way that everyone in the room is going to see you. And that's going to be the first thing that they're thinking. And so making sure that people are just aware of it and just maybe doing it at a later time.
Yeah, generally with podcasts or YouTube sessions, there might be an opportunity to circle back. Is there a debrief? If you're a paid speaker, is there an opportunity to provide feedback on what a particular moderator might do differently at a different time? There's some punches that you can pull that are pretty professional. In the same token, but generally it throws people off. And one of those things, and I've certainly done it before, so don't be like Sharon in this instance, but I've turned it back around. Like, we have this lovely person, nice suit, Jim. Just saying.
He wasn't wearing a suit, but I know what you're saying, but isn't that then just kind of giving it back?
Right. And that's not what you're necessarily to do. I think the greatest way that you can educate anyone is to educate them. And I think that that's where the diminishment of voice comes in. So what you want to do, to me, just specifically, is that sometimes microaggressions happen unknowingly. A person, woman, male, white male, black male, it really honestly, in some cases, doesn't matter. Call them up. Here's how this made me feel, right? Maybe it's not even a feeling or emotion, but present it as a fact. When this kind of thing happens in a podcast or a meeting scenario, here are a couple of things that I would like for you to consider. Your job is done. You've planted a seed and you move on. The goal is not to change the person, but you can change how you respond. You can change the information that you might provide. And so that's the awareness. Is the person even aware? Maybe they do this all the time and it's an accepted behavior. So you acknowledge it and I think put some action behind it. There's some accountability, I think, for women to be accountable in sharing the space. Most women, and I think we heard this earlier in our podcast, is around the fact that we say nothing. We deal with it, we absorb it, we move forward, even when we don't belong. So other leaders on this call, what have been your experience? What will you start with?
Orly, if I might, I develop branding points for my clients. So I do personal branding with them. And I have a group of co-creators for conscious leadership on LinkedIn, and we invite people to come to our stage. There's something related to that I want to answer the original question to. But we ask our panelists, how do you want to be introduced, right? So if you could plan ahead and say, especially if it's your years of experience you want to be valued for, right? Then you can say, this is the value that, or if it's just your experience in general, that's what you're there for, right? To share your experience, to provide maybe some bullet points, just to say, here are some things that we're going to talk about today that draw from my experience. So you're using your brand as the introduction for how you can be introduced, as we do for our panelists. Related to that, Sharon, this community I co-created with a partner, and it's pro promotion. You're a leader, you have been practicing conscious leadership, you have some secret sauce. We don't want you to keep it secret anymore. Come to the stage, kind of like Clubhouse, or come to the stage. So what I can do in that community is to make sure that the invitations that I send out are proportionately benefiting the populations that have been underrepresented traditionally, to give them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. Yeah, I mean, I think what I hear from you is, number one, taking the first step forward in creating a space, right? You reference Clubhouse. That's a new piece of technology that's out here, a space that can allow true conversations in a different way to start to tackle this, right? Allyship over accomplice. You are now an accomplice. You are partnered in creating a space to share those thoughts. Hopefully people feel safe, but let's be real, that's going to take time, right? And so I think the end goal for this is not to get tired. This is not an opportunity or a time for us to be like, this is going to go away, because that can often happen with diversity initiatives, right? We're still talking about, does this end? So always be thinking about, what's the next continuation of the thing that you're going to do? What about role models, right? Do these individuals, we heard this earlier, like, so Katie, what does that look like? Who are the role models, and how might you role model this in your organization? Anyone? What else? What about executive positions? We heard that, right? We talked about getting to that next level. What does that look like? So if we're talking about generally with the aspect of women of color, or even just women in general, being at that top level executive role, what has often been the impact, right? I'm going to give you one, and I want to hear from you. Part of it is sponsorship. Being available to be in that first round of promotions after a leader has been hired on. There are impacts in the middle of that. How might you guys stop to take a look at that? Think sponsorship, potentially mentorship, and a word I think that this work is doing, but advocacy. They're three different things. But think about how you guys might have conversation around that.
Sharon, can I put something on the table? I think, and this is just my personal experiences, like I've had negative, experiences with women who have been above me, women bosses.
Yep.
And I think that sometimes, there's like a scarcity mentality, that there's not enough room in leadership roles, and there's only so many ways that people can lead, that, we got to sharpen our elbows and bump each other out of the box. And so I've really come up against that in multiple roles and positions. And I want to make sure that I never do that. That's why this event was like really exciting and fun for me to organize, because I saw it as an opportunity to, share and lift up lots of other women and create the space. And I think that, women who do reach that pinnacle, there's scars that they get along the way. And sometimes it keeps them from turning around and lifting people up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, for me, I call it work hazing. I think it's a great point, Anne, to bring up, and it's not often shared, especially in a space of women, right? We also don't like to call ourselves out in this space, even for women of color. It becomes more of a competition versus collaboration. To Anne's point, there are so many scars that are never talked about. We often do not work, even exterior organizations, on the mental health impact of that. So we're emerging into these C-suite titles, believing that other women might have to have those same scars. You endured it, so maybe they should endure it. It's not your job. We've heard that earlier, right? It's not your job to teach. That often comes through the racial and gender bias spectrum, but it certainly happens in a gender spectrum. I have often heard from women that I would rather have a male leader than a woman leader. So here's the thing. How might you guys approach a woman leader as an advocate? And let me define advocacy. That's without having the person in the room to speak to you or I'm sorry, to speak for you. You'll never get a seat at the table. If you're not in conversation at the top, you won't get a seat at the table. How might you as an organization create structure around that? The goal has to be sustainable infrastructure. Any thoughts towards strategy of that? Any thoughts towards the support of women in a safe space to address the competition?
Sharon, this is Joanna speaking. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, I think that's the quote #1 of the year. So I had this talk exactly last week with one of the director women within my company, and we were also talking about how important sponsorship is and how few role models we have to look up to within our company. We just have one woman that is sitting at the top, with all the rest being males, 40 plus, white. And we decided to open a group together where we will invite women to this group, where we can have an open space to talk, to support each other from different departments, and see how we can help each other in different positions to raise up, to support each other in different tasks and careers, and to get a seat at the table together, not to fight against each other.
I think that that's perfect. And I know that we're winding down in our time, so I also want to give you guys some information to think about, okay? When you leave from this room, I want you to think about the challenge of the roles that women are currently in. So there has been multiple studies, 86.7% and 61.5% of roles respectively serving women. Here's what that sounds like. Chief brand, chief sustainability officers, DE&I officers, diversity and learning officers, all of these things that used to be quote unquote around feeling or belonging. How might you raise the male perspective in that arena? Think about changing the roles that might be available and the paths to the point about what women might be in. What is the view of that? I think the safe space and women getting together to figure out who can be an advocate, a mentor, and helping raise the level of knowledge, sharing knowledge, providing learning opportunities, all help on the road to the C-suite, right? What about innovation? What about analytics and data? You don't always get that from your ERG groups, right? To an earlier point, we heard Tiffany discuss from an HR perspective, the fact that there's a lot of talk, but then people go back to their respective areas. Think about how you might take what you have learned and create structure around accountability. The only way to create lasting change is to change. Look at the bottom line and contribution, right? That's the first step ladder, especially in a role where you're making money. You're in sales or organization, or there's something tied. But I'm gonna say enhancements to the emerging roles that could allow people to contribute to the bottom line results. Make that a part of your performance structure, right? Is there a new path, to the CEO on horizon? Are you creating a new role? Be sure that you create the structure at the time that you're creating roles that allow career pathing for women. You have to think about it up front or it will not be happen. It won't happen, right? And then I'm gonna go to tech-fueled advancements, right? Because we know that tech is big and we have got to expand the arena there. When you think about growth opportunities such as artificial intelligence, the future of work, you have to have further evolution and expansion of these emerging roles. We have got to target these roles, point out the areas, and then keep, for all of the women that are on this call, please keep a portfolio of your work. No one is going to be a better advocate for you than you. Be willing to be uncomfortable, be willing to advocate for yourself, be willing to create action and accountability and awareness around your wantonness to emerge and to share what you are learning while you are doing so. And I think your agencies will benefit from that. Your departments and organizations will benefit from that growth. And then it will help other women seek you out and others for that mentorship and advocacy in those spaces, right? Be big on creating the lane you seek. Relationship building is the way of the future. It always has been. And equality, I always like to say, can't wait. And equity starts today. If it wasn't there yesterday, it can start today. It can start tomorrow. Every day you go in, be thinking of a way to look for this. What else? Any other comments, problems that we can help you seek out? Drop them in the chat. Even after this call, we want to be able to help you sort this information out. The bottom line is women in senior management remain underrepresented in corporate America, even in local government. We've increased from 17% to 21%, and then COVID hit, right? We represent right now 18%. 68% are white men just a year ago. Black and Asian women and Latina, 4%. 10% are men of color. We have got to do better. Use these forums. Use this time. Call me. I'll make myself available. But we have got to, I'm so grateful for Anne. to create a space for Philadelphia women to come together and create sustainable change. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call someone. If I can't help you, maybe I know someone who can. Make yourselves available. All right? We have to be the change that we see. So thank you, everyone. I think we're going to be going back. I haven't seen the button yet. So I just want to open the floor for any more conversation before we get pulled out of our breakout room, because I want to have an opportunity for you guys to share what this experience is. But more importantly, I want someone to share one or two of the things that you plan to do next. Listening to everything you've heard, right? From the Congresswoman, shared prosperity has not been here for all. We know race and gender is an issue, but what are you going to do about it? In the climate that we have today, there'll never be another opportunity like this. There'll never be another opportunity to go back for Orly to address the gentleman who, you know, may have done something just unknowingly. That could change the trajectory of that individual if we speak up. Let's not make assumptions, because we don't want assumptions made about us.
Sharon, I just want to say that is what I'm planning to do, is to craft an email, you know, in a way that's respectful and all the rest of it. But yeah, you've really given me a way to think about it. So thank you so much for that, and thanks for the support here. You know, it's not something you would bring up in a different environment. So I think this is, to your point, this is super important to be able to even have the conversation.
Orly, I'm humbled that you would move forward in this way. I think we all can learn from that, right? And we take away something, you know, from each other. I'm excited. Would you mind maybe sharing that information back?
I was going to say, yeah, I would love to. I was going to share it back with Anne, but I'd be happy to. Is there some other way that I can share it with the group?
Yeah, I mean, just reach out to Anne and
okay,
can share.
I'll just let Anne know. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, and also when we go back to the whole group, you can share that you know, challenge. Like, what do we do? And I think it's really been great. Like, I'm thinking about, like, how do you, like, I need a strategy for when those things happen, because, you know, your heart rate goes up and you're like, did that just happen? Exactly. You know, and you really need to, like, think about it ahead of time when you're calm and cool. Like, all right, what is my plan for these situations? I think that's good. I'm going to take that into mentorship conversations too. Like, have your tactic ready. Like, what is your, you know, plan for those moments? They're going to happen.
Yeah, get with your HR leaders and your DEI strategists. Get with them, share this information. Maybe they're not thinking about, you know, the micro aspect of how this shapes up, so that you can plan, you can make yourself available like I am to do better.